You have a number in your head. It is a nice, round, sexy number with 2 commas. $1 million. For decades, culture has hammered this specific milestone into your brain as the finish line. You visualize it, and you see a yacht, or at least a very aggressive early retirement where you never answer an email again. But here is the cold bucket of water you need to wake up to. $1 million is no longer a ticket to the rich list. It is the entrance fee to the middle class. The problem is that millionaire is a psychological anchor. We fixate on it because it sounds safe. It feels heavy. But if you retire today with exactly $1 million and you plan to live for 30 years, the math says you are walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. The safe withdrawal rate, that 4% rule financial advisors love to quote, has fundamentally broken down. If you try to live like a millionaire on $1 million today, you will run out of money before you run out of breath. You are not wealthy, you are just currently solvent. And there is a massive difference. To understand why your nest egg is betraying you, we have to look at the silent thief living in your wallet. Most people think of inflation as the price of milk going up. That is wrong. That is a passive way to view it. You need to view inflation as the energy draining out of your money. It is your currency losing its caloric density. It takes more units of currency to do the same amount of heavy lifting it did yesterday. Let's step into a time machine to see how bad the damage really is. If you travel back to 1980, having $1 million meant you were elite. You were dynasty rich. You were lifestyles of the rich and famous rich. In 1980, the median home price was under $50,000. A new car was $7,000. With $1 million, you could buy 20 houses and still have cash left over to buy a small island. Fast forward to today. That same $1 million has the purchasing power of roughly $300,000 in 1980 money. Think about that. If you worked your entire life to save $1 million, you have effectively saved $300,000 in the currency value that your parents understood. You are not retiring with dynasty money. You are retiring with assistant regional manager money. This creates what I call the lifestyle lag. Your brain has been conditioned by 40 years of movies and pop culture to associate the word millionaire with a specific standard of living: first-class flights, country clubs, and zero stress. But your bank account is delivering a reality of economy comfort, public golf courses, and coupon clipping. The disconnect between what you expect that number to buy and what it actually buys is where the misery happens. You feel poor because you expected to feel rich, even though you technically hit the target, and it gets worse once you actually stop working. You have to deal with the rule of 72. Usually we use this rule to calculate how fast an investment doubles. You take 72, divide it by the interest rate, and that is your doubling time. But in retirement, we use the rule of 72 to calculate how fast your purchasing power is destroyed. If we assume a real-world inflation rate of just 3.5%, which is optimistic given recent history, your money loses half its value every 20 years. That means if you retire at 65 with $1 million in purchasing power, by the time you are 85, that same pile of cash only buys $500,000 worth of goods and services. You didn't spend the money, but the value evaporated into the ether. This is the time machine effect in reverse. You are traveling forward into a future where your money becomes progressively more useless every single day you stay alive. It is like trying to run a marathon while someone is slowly removing oxygen from the air. You can still run, but it gets harder with every step. And remember, this erosion happens before we even talk about the government's cut. Because unless you have that million stashed in a Roth IRA, that money does not actually belong to you. You have a silent partner, and he is coming for his share. Here's where the math gets violent. Most people look at their 401k balance and say, I have $1 million. No, you do not. You have a pre-tax hallucination. You have a gross number that has never been scrubbed by the reality of the Internal Revenue Service. If you have your money in a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, which is where 90% of retirees keep their wealth, you do not own that account. You are in a binding business partnership with the federal government. And here's the problem with this partnership. You put up 100% of the capital. You took 100% of the risk. You lost sleep during the bear markets, and you paid all the fees. But the government, your silent partner, retain the right to determine exactly how much of the profit they want to keep when you finally decide to sell. Think of the government as the worst group project partner you ever had in high school. They did absolutely zero work. They did not contribute a single slide to the presentation. They were eating glue in the corner while you were building the portfolio. But on the day you graduate and try to spend your money, they show up demanding 30% of the grade. Let's break down the actual numbers. When you withdraw money from a traditional retirement account, it does not get taxed at the friendly long-term capital gains rates of 15 or 20%. It gets taxed as ordinary income. That means it is treated exactly the same as wages from a job. If you pull out enough to live a middle-class life, the feds are going to take anywhere from 12 to 24% right off the top. Then, unless you live in a tax haven like Florida, Texas, or Tennessee, your state government wants a taste too. If you live in a high-tax state, that could be another 5 to 10%. So, let's do the math on your millionaire status. You take your $1 million. You subtract 25% for federal taxes. You subtract 5% for state taxes. Suddenly, your $1 million is actually $700,000 of spendable cash. You just lost $300,000 of purchasing power without buying a single thing. You didn't buy a Ferrari. You didn't go to Europe. You just paid the entrance fee to access your own money. That $300,000 is gone. It is a phantom limb. You can feel it. You remember it being there, but you cannot use it to buy groceries. And remember, all of this assumes tax rates stay low. We have $34 trillion in national debt. Do you really think taxes are going to stay at historical lows for the next 30 years? If the government decides to raise rates to cover the deficit, your silent partner just decided to increase their equity stake in your life savings to 50%, and there is nothing you can do about it. It gets worse. You might think, fine, I just won't touch the money. I will let it grow and keep my taxes low. The government is way ahead of you. They invented a little torture device called the Required Minimum Distribution, or RMD. Once you hit age 73, the IRS loses its patience. They stop asking politely and start forcing you to withdraw a specific percentage of your account every single year, whether you need the cash or not. This forced income can push you into a higher tax bracket, which then triggers a tax torpedo that makes 85% of your Social Security benefits taxable. It is a domino effect of taxation that shreds your efficiency. So, we have established that inflation is shrinking your money, and the government is taking a third of what is left. But at least taxes are somewhat predictable. You can put them in a spreadsheet. The next thread is not predictable. It is a random chaos engine that does not care about your math. You have accounted for the government stealing your money. You have accounted for inflation shrinking your money. But you have not accounted for the fact that your own body is a depreciating asset that is actively trying to bankrupt you. This is the single biggest variable that blows up financial plans, and yet when I look at most retirement spreadsheets, I see a flat line item for medical expenses that looks suspiciously low. It is usually just a placeholder number, but reality does not care about your placeholder. Reality is expensive. Here is the data point that should scare you straight. According to recent industry studies, the average retired couple at age 65 today will need approximately $315,000 just to cover out-of-pocket healthcare costs, and that number is after taxes. That means you need to earn roughly $400,000 just to pay the doctors. If you have a $1 million portfolio and you subtract the tax liability we just talked about, and then you subtract this healthcare liability, you are suddenly left with almost nothing for actual living. You are essentially running a nursing home for yourself, where you are the only patient and also the only investor. Now I can hear you screaming at the screen, but I have Medicare. The government pays for this. This is the Medicare myth, and it is dangerous. Medicare is not a full coverage warranty. It is a catastrophic insurance plan with more holes than a screen door on a submarine. Medicare. Part A covers hospitals, sure, but it does not cover dental. It does not cover vision. It does not cover hearing aids. Have you priced a good pair of hearing aids lately? They cost more than a used Honda Civic. And critically, Medicare does not cover the one thing that actually destroys wealth: long-term custodial care. If you have a stroke or develop dementia and need help getting dressed, eating, or bathing, Medicare pays $0. Nothing. You are on your own. And the cost of a private room in a nursing home today is averaging over $100,000 a year. In some coastal cities, it is closer to $180,000 a year. If you need 3 years of care, that is $500,000 gone. Poof! Vaporized. That is half your portfolio erased because you had the bad luck of living too long in a body that stopped working. This introduces a concept I call the sequence of health events. In finance, we worry about the stock market crashing right when you retire. But the biological crash is worse. If you have a major health event at age 68, right at the start of your retirement, it destroys the compound interest curve for the next 20 years. You are forced to liquidate assets, sell stocks, sell bonds, to pay for care just when those assets were supposed to be growing. You are killing the golden goose to pay the hospital bill. If that same health event happened at age 90, it wouldn't matter as much, because you would have already benefited from 25 years of growth. But you cannot time your own biology. So, what is the solution? The financial industry tells you to buy long-term care insurance. But this is what I call a lose-lose bet. It is mathematically necessary, but it feels terrible. If you pay the premiums, which can be $5,000 a year or more, and you die peacefully in your sleep without ever needing care, you feel like you wasted massive amounts of money. You lost the bet. But if you win the bet, it means you are incapacitated in a facility, unable to feed yourself. There is no scenario where you high-five your spouse and say, "Boy, I am glad we bought this policy." It is purely defensive. You are stuck in a trap. If you self-insure, one illness wipes you out. If you buy insurance, the premiums bleed you dry. It is a brutal reality that turns a $1 million fortune into a pile of medical receipts. And the worst part? Even if your health holds up and you dodge the nursing home bullet, you still have to survive the casino that is the stock market. Because if the hospital doesn't take your money, the timing of your retirement date might do it for you. Now, let's assume you are the healthiest person alive. You eat kale, you run marathons, and your genetics are perfect. You have dodged the healthcare bullet, but you still have to walk through the minefield of the stock market. And this brings us to the most dangerous mathematical concept in all of retirement planning: sequence of returns risk. Most people operate under the average return fallacy. You look at the S&P 500 and say, well, historically, the market returns about 10% a year. If I withdraw 4%, I am safe, because 10 is bigger than 4. That is third-grade math, and it will bankrupt you. In the accumulation phase, when you are working and saving, the order of your returns does not matter. If the market crashes when you are 30, it is actually good for you because you are buying cheap shares. But once you stop working and start withdrawing, the order of returns is the only thing that matters. It is financial gravity. Let me illustrate this with a nightmare scenario involving two imaginary retirees, Jack and Jill. They are identical. They both save exactly $1 million. They both withdraw exactly $40,000 a year, adjusted for inflation. They both invest in the exact same index fund. The only difference is that Jack retires in the year 2000, right before the dot-com crash, and Jill retires in the year 2013, right at the start of a historic bull market. Jack retires, and in his first 2 years, the market drops by 40%. His $1 million becomes $600,000, but he still has to withdraw his $40,000 to buy groceries. So now his principal is down to $560,000. He is cannibalizing his own portfolio. Even if the market roars back the next year, it is too late. The math is broken. He has dug a hole so deep that the compound interest ladder cannot reach him. Jack runs out of money in 12 years. He is destitute by age 77. Jill, on the other hand, retires into a bull market. Her portfolio grows to $1.2 million in the first 2 years, even after she takes out her spending money. She dies at age 95, with $3 million left over for her grandkids. Jack and Jill had the exact same average return over their lifetimes, but because Jack got the bad returns first, he died poor. This is the cruelty of the sequence of returns. It is luck, it is timing, and you cannot control it. This is why the famous 4% rule is currently under attack. This rule was created by William Bengen in the 1990s. using data from a time when bond yields were significantly higher than they are today. Back then, you could put half your money in safe government bonds and get a 5 or 6% yield. Today, relying on the 4% rule is like driving a car using a map from 1994. The roads have changed. If you retire today with high stock valuations and low bond yields, withdrawing 4% of your portfolio is statistically likely to deplete your funds in about 20 to 25 years. If you plan on living to 90, that is a catastrophic failure. And we haven't even talked about the psychology of this. Spreadsheets are logical. Humans are emotional wrecks. Imagine you retire with your $1 million. You hand in your resignation letter. You throw a party. 6 months later, a recession hits. You log into your account and see your balance is now $750,000. You just lost $250,000, effectively 10 years of your working life, vanishing in 6 months. And you still have to withdraw money to pay the electric bill. The panic you will feel is not something you can model in Excel. It is visceral. It is a fight-or-flight response. Most people in this situation panic and sell their stocks at the bottom to stop the bleeding, which locks in the loss permanently. They turn a temporary market decline into a permanent lifestyle destruction. The only way to fight this is with something called a bond tent, or a cash buffer. This means for the first 5 years of retirement, the fragile decade, you hold a massive amount of cash or short-term bonds, maybe 2 or 3 years' worth of living expenses. If the market crashes, you spend the cash. You do not sell the stocks, you let the stocks recover. But here is the catch. Holding that much cash drags down your total growth. It is heavy armor. It protects you from the crash, but it slows you down during the boom. You are paying for safety with potential profit. So you have navigated the inflation, the taxes, the healthcare costs, and the market timing. You have built your bond tent. You are surviving. But now you face the final boss. The one risk that you technically should be happy about, but financially, is a disaster. You can survive the market, but can you survive your own longevity? Welcome to the longevity paradox. This is the risk nobody discusses at retirement parties because it sounds grim, but it is the most dangerous variable in your spreadsheet. It is the risk of not dying. We are culturally programmed to view a long life as the ultimate victory, but strictly from a financial perspective, living too long is a catastrophe. It is a scenario where your heart keeps beating, but your bank account is flatlined years ago. Here is the actuarial reality that should keep you awake at night. If you are a married couple, both age 65 today, there is a 50% probability, a literal coin toss, that at least one of you will be alive at age 92. There is a 25% chance one of you hits 97. That means your $1 million portfolio does not need to last 20 years. It needs to last 35. And critically, those last 10 years are the most expensive years of your entire existence. Economists call this the inflation of the very old. When you are 90, you are not buying gadgets which get cheaper over time. You are buying services. You are buying human labor. You need someone to cook, clean, and drive you to the clinic. The cost of labor rises much faster than the cost of goods. So while the government says inflation is 3%, your personal inflation rate is closer to 6 or 7. This destroys the safe floor of your retirement. Your safe floor is your guaranteed income, Social Security, and maybe a pension. Everything above that floor must come from your $1 million. If your portfolio generates $40,000 a year and assisted living costs $8,000 a month in 2024, you are already underwater. Project that out to 2045, and that $40,000 might barely cover the grocery bill. You are running a marathon where the finish line keeps moving further away. Think about the psychological toll. You are 85 and mentally sharp, but you are watching your balance dwindle to zero. You start skipping medications to save money. You turn the heat down in winter. You stop visiting the grandkids because gas is too expensive. This is not the golden years. This is financial anorexia. You're starving yourself to make the money last because you are terrified of becoming a burden. And the cruel irony is that by trying to preserve the capital, you are guaranteeing a lower quality of life than if you had just died earlier. So, we have dismantled the myth. The million is not enough. So what is the new target? If you run the numbers based on current bond yields and healthcare costs, the number you actually need to replicate the 1980s millionaire lifestyle is roughly $2.5 million. That is the number where the math actually works. That is the number where a 3% withdrawal rate covers a comfortable existence without the constant terror of ruin. But chasing a bigger number is just running on a faster treadmill. The real solution is a total identity shift. You need to move from a net worth mindset to a cash flow mindset. Net worth is a vanity metric. It is just a score in a video game. You cannot buy bread with net worth unless you sell the asset. And once you sell the asset, it stops producing growth. It is exactly like chopping up your staircase to feed the fireplace to stay warm. Eventually, you run out of wood and you're stuck on the ground floor. Instead, you need to build income streams that do not require selling the principal. You need dividends. You need real estate royalties. You need money that hits your account whether you get out of bed or not. Stop trying to hit a magic number and start trying to build a magic paycheck. This is how people who retire with multi-million dollars think. If you want to think like them too, watch this next video.